Here are the main developments with regards to coronavirus. This Sunday morning, mandatory quarantine laws are now in place, with all Australians arriving from overseas escorted to hotel rooms. The federal government is today announcing $1 billion for mental health and domestic violence services. National Cabinet meets this afternoon, where further lockdown restrictions could be discussed after Victoria's Chief Health Officer speaks out.
Passengers on board stranded cruise ships off Western Australia are to be flown home, while West Australians are to go into quarantine on Rottnest Island. And Spain suffers its deadliest day in the pandemic, with 832 deaths. And we have comprehensive coverage of the unfolding crisis with a team of reporters in key locations. First to 7 News reporter Samantha Brett, who is at Sydney Airport. Sam, good morning. The new mandatory quarantine measures, they're now being enforced?
They are, Mon and Matt, good morning. So these will affect the 3,200 passengers that are set to arrive this morning here at Sydney Airport. Now, in an unprecedented move, New South Wales Police has actually asked all family and friends not to come to the airport this morning. They're not allowed to greet the passengers, and they're certainly not allowed to take them home. Instead, these passengers will be screened. They will then be greeted by members of the police force as well as the Defence Force. They will be escorted to a number of buses that are waiting behind me. They will then be taken to one of 15 hotels around the city. That is where they will have to stay for the next 14 days in isolation. If anyone is caught breaking those isolation rules, they could face up to $1,000 in fines or even jail time. And this is because the government has announced that 2/3 of the cases right across Australia have actually come from people returning from overseas. We saw about 300 people actually return from overseas on a cruise ship a couple of days ago. They've been holed up in a hotel room in the city. They say those conditions are less than ideal, but we are certainly going to see scenes like this over the next few days, guys.
We certainly are. Thank you, Sam. Well, now to 7 News political reporter Olivia Leeming in Canberra. Olivia, a major boost to mental health services expected to be announced this morning.
Yeah, of course, with more Australians working from home, more are expected to suffer from social isolation and anxiety, of course, from facing the prospect of losing their jobs and businesses. So this $1.1 billion package being announced today, that'll help fund a national wellbeing campaign, help Beyond Blue launch a dedicated support line, and there'll be online mental health support for our doctors and nurses. Also boosting telehealth services, so more Australians can have a GP appointment over the phone or through a video call. And there'll also be funding for counselling services and programs to try and stop domestic violence. Concerns that will be a byproduct of more families forced to stay at home as well. $200 million to support charities providing food and other emergency relief to the most needy. Now, as early as tomorrow, the government is also expected to announce a third major stimulus package to help businesses who have to close. The Prime Minister convening a meeting of the National Cabinet this afternoon. In the meantime, warning Australians they need to take this seriously and stay at home as much as possible. A message to those flooding beaches and shopping centres. Victoria's Chief Health Officer tweeting that some of the behaviour has been, in his words, really crap, warning that without change, we are headed to 100,000 cases in 2 to 3 weeks. So those who break the rules are risking lives.
That is clear, isn't it? Well, 7 News US correspondent Paul Caddick joins us now from New York. Paul, President Trump has waved off the latest floating hospital.
Good morning, Mon. Yeah, that's right. After yesterday, we saw the big floating hospital arrive in Los Angeles. Today, in fact, just a couple of hours ago, the Commander-in-Chief was down in Norfolk, Virginia, to wave off its twin, the Comfort, which is headed to the virus front line here in New York City. It is expected to arrive on Monday local time, and then from Tuesday, it'll start taking non-COVID-19 patients off the hands of local hospitals, really giving those hospitals the chance to focus just on coronavirus. It has 1,000 beds, 1,200 medical staff, 12 operating theatres, and it'll all be ready to go. Here's Donald Trump from earlier this morning.
This great ship behind me is a 70,000-ton message of hope and solidarity to the incredible people of New York, a place I know very well, a place I love. We're here for you.
Now, while there is help heading into New York City, there's questions about whether there might be more measures to stop people heading out of New York City. Donald Trump mentioning this morning that he is considering a possible quarantine for New York, New Jersey and surrounding states. Exactly how that would work is not yet clear but other states have already asked New Yorkers travelling there to self-quarantine for a couple of weeks. This is the epicentre. The United States has more than 111,000 cases now. Most of those are in New York State. And here right now, guys, there's a new case confirmed positive every 8 seconds.
Quite extraordinary. Thank you, Paul. And finally to 7 News Europe Bureau Chief Hugh Whitfeld, who joins us now. Hugh, Italy's death toll has soared now past 10,000.
Yeah, Matt, a number of pretty grim milestones across Europe in the last 24 hours. 889 people have been killed in Italy in one day, as we saw pretty tragic scenes from a town in the north of Italy where a priest was blessing coffins by the dozens. They were being cremated, and at another nearby town, they are holding a funeral every 30 minutes. In France, they are sending some of the sick now over the border to Germany in helicopters as the French health system buckles under the weight of tens of thousands of coronavirus cases. Spain has just experienced its deadliest 24 hours of the crisis so far. 832 people killed in one day. That pushes the number of those Spaniards killed by coronavirus above the 5,000 mark, and a bleak day here in Britain as well. 260 people killed by coronavirus. That is the highest number again so far. That pushes the number of cases in Britain over the 1,000 mark. One of the health service bosses here in the UK saying today, quote, "If we can keep deaths below 20,000, we will have done very well." That's pretty chilling. That as Boris Johnson chaired an emergency meeting from behind doors at self-isolation. He, of course, is working via video conference after testing positive himself, guys.
Those figures are incredible. Thank you, Hugh, and to our team of reporters. We'll check in, of course, throughout the morning.
Oh my gosh, those figures. And when you hear the experts saying, come on, everybody, you've got to act now. Don't go to the beach. Don't do anything that you don't have to do. Yeah, very sobering.
They had more 911 calls in America yesterday than they did during the September 11 crisis, which really puts it in perspective.
Wow.